Hello, everybody. This is the Scottish Rugby podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. It's our bonus little OnlyFins podcast that we do during kind of internationals and autumn nations, where we do a kind of short mini pod just after the team announcement. I've got John Anderson with me. Hello, John.
Hello.
And we're really lucky to be joined. We've got Mitch from the Rugby Fixation podcast in Queensland joining us as well. Hello to Mitch.
G'day, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
No, that's okay. It's good to get a kind of an Aussie perspective. As we're recording this, unfortunately, the Australian team has not been out, and we were just talking before we came on air that we're puzzled to know why, given half the Aussie team have been on Scottish time previously, that they don't understand how time difference works.
I mean, they've called in so many French players. Maybe they're trying to wait for it to work for Paris. They're just going to go to every time zone except the one that actually benefits, you know?
Yeah. So we've got the Scotland team anyway, so we will chat about that and do a bit of a preview. So we've got front row of Schumann, Turner, Ferguson. Second row is Sam Skinner, Grant Gilchrist. Back row, Jamie Ritchie, Hamish Watson, Matt Ferguson. Got Ali Price and Finn Russell together again. We've got Sam Johnson, Chris Harris at centre. Then you got Duhan van der Merwe back on one wing, Darcy on the other, and Stuart Hogg at fullback. Replacements: Ewan Ashman, Jamie Batty, Ollie Keble, Jamie Hodgson, Josh Bayliss, George Horn, Adam Hastings, and Kyle Steyn. John, is it the bench is a little bit of a surprise in places? I think the team's there or thereabouts what we were expecting.
Yeah, I think given the obvious, we're quite far down our depth chart now in terms of second rows. So given the injuries we've got there, that's still a very, very good second row to put out. And I think the rest of the team probably picked itself in a lot of ways. The bench, yeah, there's a couple of surprises on there. Not being that guy, but I had mentioned Ashman previously, so just being that guy. But Ashman, it's great to see him in there. He has been playing really well this season, so obviously he's getting his reward. I think there's Hooker's a strange one for Scotland just now. I think there is a degree of, obviously Turner seems to have kind of usurped everyone. And Fraser Brown injured. McInally hasn't really come back that well. So it's just, I think trying out some new options isn't bad. It's good to see Bayliss get his run as well. We'll see where he comes on. He could be quite destructive with ball in hand as well. And as you say, Cammy, you said before we started, there's potential for some cats and a rave.
Yeah, because it's the dream. So this is Mitch. This is our dream lineup here. The potential for this of having George Horn coming on at 9, Finn Russell shifting to 12, and Adam Hastings at 10. That's what we refer to as cats as a rave. We're all better off, and anything can happen at that point.
We were close. We were close against Fiji a few years ago. We had Price, Hastings, Russell, didn't we?
No, we achieved it. We achieved the full.
Did we get the full cats?
That Hastings try came off the back of Cats at Rave. It was George Horn to Russell, who then stuck. There's Horn, Hastings, Russell, and Hastings did the loop around and was put through the hole.
That's magnificent.
So we've achieved it. Mitch, how in terms of, like, obviously Australia have had a tough time of it up until recently, and then you've got this run of 5 games where you've beaten, you've beaten South Africa, and it's quite. I don't know. Before this, when it was announced, I thought, "Oh, great, Australia again. This would be good." I felt like we were in a good place, but now I'm not so sure. So, how does this feel? Kind of seeing the Scottish team, how does this feel to you as an Aussie?
It feels very mixed because I think the 2021 yardstick's been moved so much with obviously the 3-test series against France was a B/C team and getting pumped 3 times by New Zealand. The mood in Australia was very sort of all over the place until we beat South Africa twice, and everyone's like, we're world beaters, we're back to number 1. Australians are very poor losers but great winners. So as soon as we're winning, everyone's bandwagoning. So I think there's a lot of excitement, but people have been very quick to bring up, even people that I work with that aren't massive rugby fans have said, wait, last time we played Scotland, didn't they wipe the floor with us? Wasn't that like a real pants pulled down sort of moment? And look, it was. I think the excitement sort of lies in those teams are so different from 4 years ago. We haven't had a chance to play each other recently, so I think Hooper, Beale, and Tupou are probably the only 3 in the squad that sort of survived from that game. And I don't really rate Beale much of a chance of starting, hopefully. So my my concern really is just how strong the Scotland team looks with the with the UK-based players back in there, because last week they demolished Tonga, which is a step down from the Wallabies, obviously, but the side was so damaging. Like seeing Rufus McLean and Kyle Stein just carve up, I thought this is going to be a real hassle for us. And then you see that neither of them can start. Stone's on the bench, but they've brought in Van der Merwe and Hogg to fill the shoes out the back. Like it's really probably the most dangerous I've seen the back line look collectively. And it's best represented by all the Lions call-ups this year. So I'm sort of shaken. I don't think the 5-game streak's really doing us that much of a favour.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, John, because I think we said that this feels like, I think we said this on the podcast this week, this feels very much like a team picked to play Australia, because you've got the 5-3 split on the bench. I think we'll see a different split against South Africa next weekend, but it's the back row battle and the battle at the breakdown is going to be absolutely fascinating, especially because we've got Roman Poit, who just seems to like to ref. It's his last game. This is his last international game.
Yeah.
All bets are off.
All no laws, just vibes. That's what he goes on.
That was the first message I sent my group chat. Was if it's his last game, I don't have a clue how this could go. Like we could be seeing absolute madness. We could see the strictest game he's ever done. Like anything could happen.
Yeah.
But I think just two mentions there, the back row battle, like Hamish Watson versus Michael Hooper. This is probably two of the most informed sevens in the world. Obviously, Six Nations player of the tournament. Most Aussie fans, but even a lot of South Africans and Kiwis I've seen trumpeting Hooper for World Player of the Year. There's so much to like about this matchup. I know the sevens don't tend to just see each other that often, but just seeing two players probably at the peak of their powers right now is awesome. And the other thing I just want to throw out, Ewan Ashman, I didn't know much about him going into this and getting a debut. I thought maybe he wouldn't get that against South Africa, but I think you're right. Like this is a game against Wallabies. We don't have a settled hooker or backup hooker. This is probably a pretty good game to, test that. Our lineout's not super damaging. We've got a pretty good scrum at the moment, but this is a pretty good game to make your debut against, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. The hooker thing is interesting, John, because the lineup wasn't brilliant against Tonga.
No.
And so I mean it's not, I think that Turner did a good job, and I think you've obviously got Gilchrist back in, and Sam Skinner does a lot of lineup calling and stuff. So I don't know, that's going to be interesting. I think if Australia, as Mitch says, haven't got a settled hooker, and Scotland's lineout's a work in progress, it seems.
Do you know what? I think I've obviously given Grant Gilchrist what for on this podcast so many times, right? But to be fair to him, he is a world-class line-out operator. So Turner's darts tend to be a bit ropey. We see it at Glasgow as well. He can be a little bit wayward, but there's other times he turns up and he'll nail every throw, and he's inconsistent. So if he has one of his good days, with Gilchrist kind of probably calling the line out, I would imagine, I think we'll be okay. We've got that kind of degree of flexibility in the back row as well. So we've got obviously Jamie Ritchie's in there. He can act as a line out option as well. So there's options there, and I think, the team's been picked with. It feels a bit like, let's not worry too much about line outs and scrums and that. Let's just run really, really fast and hard at people. And I like that tactic.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting lineup, and I think that's you can see it's a lineup that's a kind of lineup that's there to play rugby.
Yeah.
As opposed to grind things out. So it's going to be a really interesting game. I think staying on the bench, John, I think we said on the podcast, that's a fairly obvious choice when you've got this split, because he can cover centre as well.
Yeah, so we were talking about it.
Kinghorn was, I think Kinghorn was never going to make it, I don't think, if we're going with this split.
No. And that's not because we're Kinghorn truthers. It's not because we're haters. It's because he's been picked. Kyle Stain's been picked because he covers 13. Russell covers 12. Harris covers 12. Stain cover the wing as well. Hastings 10 in full back. There's your backs all covered. That's why he's there. Kinghorn can cover wing 15, 10. I bet you could run him in the centre, and that would be quite fun. But I don't know how good it would be.
It's a hell of a turnaround for Finn Russell now, because we've got two vice captains and a captain again. This will be interesting for Roman Poit, whether he makes Stuart whether he's happy to speak to vice captains or he's going to make Stuart Hogg run the length of the pitch every time he needs to talk to the captain.
Hoggy covers 27 kilometres in the first half.
Yeah, but it is a hell of a turn off Finn Russell, because I think it was, it was Ian had put on his Facebook memories about the fact that, it was only 2 years ago, in fact, almost to the day, that Finn Russell was kicked out of camp for, drinking one too many beers, allegedly. And now here he is back. I think that says something about Gregor Townsend, John, that he's not a stubborn coach. Like I can't think of another international coach that would be open to burying the hatchet and moving on. Yeah. That would be it for any other player with that kind of breach. And given what happened in the press afterwards, that should have been it.
Well, that was the point I was going to make, actually, Cam. The press afterwards, it got ugly. Like, both sides were taking swipes at each other. It was ugly, and there probably was a question whether he could return, but it says a lot, and I think we've seen a lot from Townsend over the years, that he does have, he had the incident with Stuart Hogg at Glasgow as well, where Stuart had his people over in Ulster were batting their eyelids at him and saying, "Come hither, young Stuart." And Gregor dropped him and said, "No, do you know what? No, son, you can sit out the final, you can sit out this." And but they buried the hatchet and they got the job done. And he's obviously his captain for Scotland now. So clearly, as you say, Townsend, he must forgive. This is revolutionary. Like, I wonder if it's something Pep Guardiola does, because obviously Townsend's talked a lot about following the Pep philosophy.
Yeah, well, it's he does Pep's great philosophy is FIFO.
FIFO,
where you fit in or you F off.
That's right. Yes,
that's Pep's philosophy, and I think I guess that to a certain extent, Hogg certainly showed a lot of contrition when he came back into the Glasgow side, and I think him and Russell have come to an understanding. I don't think there's been any contrition necessarily on either side, but I think they maybe understand each other better and we're willing to move on. Speaking of moving on, though, Mitch, we've got Dave Rennie coming back, and now Dave Rennie left Scotland under a bit of a cloud, because this, on paper, I think he did very well at Glasgow. He reached the pro, what was it, 14 at the time, John?
14 final? At the time, yeah. He
reached the final. He made the playoffs, but there was a lot after he left. There was a lot of disquiet from a number of ex-players. Off on the flip side is that there's a number of ex-players that really, really like Dave Rennie and really like what he did. But Glasgow never really I don't know, there's a feeling that they never kicked on under him. He didn't do much to develop kind of players. But I don't know, I don't know whether it's just that international rugby suits him better, but there seemed to be a lot of kind of positive noise coming out of the Australian squad about what he's done after a bit of a shaky start.
Yeah, the big thing seems to be around culture, and everyone's really positive about how he's just unified everyone. And I mean, Australia is naturally a bit of a cultural melting pot. Like, we've got a lot of Pacific Islanders in the team naturally, and then also trying to get the Indigenous Australians represented in there as well. And I think having his own Cook Island heritage, he's tried to embrace everyone in there. Everyone seems to have bought into it, which is good. But you're right about the Glasgow, because I was trying to keep up with some of the games, especially when I heard he was coming to the Wallabies. And, with the squad that he had and with some of the players there, I thought he started pretty strong and then probably didn't get to the peaks he had with the Chiefs in New Zealand. And part of me does wonder if he does need some of that sort of Polynesian or that, the Southern Hemisphere sort of vibe, where there's just a difference in the players and how they sort of have grown up playing. I think a lot of the similarities he'd find in Waikato with the Chiefs, you'd probably find a lot in definitely parts of Queensland and New South Wales. So whether it's just the playing style, I think I've loved him for the Wallabies. He seems to have got everyone to buy in, and that's a great thing. But you're right. I was a little shocked that he didn't get Glasgow to actually win the title, to get them to that sort of next step consistently, I think.
And how are you finding Matt Taylor? Because, again, he kind of felt like he ran out of steam a little bit with Scotland. That, he'd started off, the defence was quite solid, but over time our defence just seemed to get weaker and weaker, and Steve Tandy's coming in and really tightened things up. So has he found a kind of a new lease of life in Australia with the Australian defence, or is it still an issue?
I think it's ebbed and flowed, and the problem is I think we've played New Zealand 7 times, in in Rennie's 17-game tenure. So, that makes up such a large chunk. That first game when it was 16-all, I thought, oh my God, we're going to be able to do it. This is great. We can match it with them. And then this year we've seen so many blowouts, and they do tend to do that. Their counter-attacking game's just so good. And what I'll say for Matt Taylor, he's done a great job of getting players to nail their one-on-one tackling and their cover defense. So that's been a really strong point. I think we've seen a lot of times where certain breaks have been made in previous years that just would have been a try. We've actually counterbacked pretty well, given away a few more penalties in the process, but I think it's actually led to a lot less tries conceded. The challenge will be, I think, traditionally the Wallabies have been pretty easy to read and analyse, especially under the Checker era. It was very, I think, easy for teams to look at us and say, okay, well, this is how we can pick them apart. My concern is that obviously happened with Matt Taylor in Scotland, and I'm concerned that's going to start happening quite soon. The majority of our wins have been done sort of in a similar way. We don't blow teams away by much. We sort of have to stay in it. It's a bit of a fight. Very clearly against Japan, we had this really weird tactic of not ever going for long passes, just trying to play blindside and really short passes. Good teams will pick us off if we try and do that again. And I don't think, we were in a position to try and hide our best hand. So I think, my big concern is with that defensive side of things, our attacks improved a lot. Our one-on-one defense has improved a lot. I don't know how well we'll do against these Northern Hemisphere teams. And this Scottish team will know a lot of how we're going to play.
Yeah, and I suppose that's it, John, because I suppose the worry for Scotland is you've got a coaching setup in Australia that knows a lot about how probably all the players operate, given they're familiar with the Scotland setup in Glasgow. But that works two ways, and I suppose the unknown quantity is that we coaching wise we've got more unknowns to Australia than the other way around. That I don't think anybody who's there worked with Steve Tandy, for example.
No, absolutely. I think the way it was interesting, the Matt Taylor thing, when Tandy came in, the difference in the Scottish defence, there's like the structure just seemed to change overnight, and it was like really heartening. But yeah, I totally agree. I think we're probably in a slightly better position, and Rennie's been away from Scotland for a couple of years now. That'd be about a couple of years now. Jeez, time flies, doesn't it? Eh? Just realising 2 years later. And in that time, we've had the core of the side, the core of the Scottish side is probably similar in that your kind of headline players are still the same, but there's new blood there, and Dave Rennie certainly will do his best to kind of create a structure that mitigates that. My concern would be scrummaging wise, it's going to be a right ding dong. Xander Fagerson came on leaps and bounds under the tutelage of Petrus du Plessis, so it'll be interesting to see if Petrus is passing on some of the wisdom to the Australian props on how to best big sandbags.
Yeah, well, I know that Xander Fagerson took a lot of Petrus's things to the Lions thing because he had all those weird
the bands and the stretchy neck things.
The stuff that makes it look like you should find it in somebody's basement somewhere. or in a club where you have to do a secret knock to go into. But yeah, he certainly bought into that. Like you said, that'll be interesting to see how weaknesses are exploited. Mitch, what's your feeling then? I mean, I know it's hard we've not got the Wallaby squad to look at, but Ken, how do you see things panning out? What's your prediction for scoreline?
Scoreline at the moment, I think it's going to be 5 points either side. I know, other than the blowout at the end of 2017, I think the last 6 or 7 games have been really, really tight. Within that sort of one try scored. I think the concern for me is that the Wallabies will be playing their first game without either Quaid or Samu Karevi, so they're both definitely gone, which does make a big difference. O'Connor was in great form for Super Rugby, but he's had so many injuries. And the concern for me is probably just 2 areas. The back row, I'm not a massive Rob Leota fan, so if he starts at 6, I don't think he's anywhere near the calibre of Jamie Ritchie. Lockie Swinton's marginally better, but again, I think it's a real prime opportunity, especially for 2 young number 8s. Matt Fagerson versus Rob Valentini is nearly worth price of admission. That's a great clash. So I think for me, if we can shore up set piece, I do think we've probably got the better front row and locks depending on who we play. That's probably the one area I'm a little bit more confident. But the Scottish outside backs, that's lethal. And without Simon Karevi, we're looking at a centre combination probably of Paisami and Ikitau, both 23, both under or about 10 caps. Against Johnson and Chris Harris, that's a massive ask. So I think if the Wallabies get line out, scrum ascendancy, we probably get up by 5. If Scotland get even parity, they get up. So that would be my my issue. I'll say Wallabies by 4 because I'm going to be optimistic, but let's just say that the sports bet account would definitely be going to Scotland, so I'm happy either way.
Yeah. John, what's your feeling about the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a sensible analysis. I personally think set piece is not going to be. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Actually, I think both teams are out to play, and both teams will run the ball at each other with every opportunity. I think if that happens, Scotland's kicking game, particularly with the 50-22 variation, I think both Hogg and Russell have shown an aptitude to that law. So there could be some interesting kicking battles, but I think, I think the Scottish back row is too good with Richie. Richie being the kind of kingmaker there. I think he changes the whole dynamic of the Scottish back row, because he was originally a 7. He played 7, and he's kind of come to 6. So you've almost got that two-fetcher approach, which we stole from you guys all those years ago.
The Pooper model lives on.
Yeah. Well, we went a step further and went with 3 7s at one point. So.
That was in that game.
That game, yeah.
That semi-final.
Shall not be quarter-final. Should have been a semi-final. But yeah, I think the Scottish back row will get Scotland some front football. I think Russell could tear up any team on the planet just now. And as you say, that back three is absolutely lethal. And the good thing from a Scottish perspective is the bench, it doesn't drop the intensity at all. George Horne and Adam Hastings are not going to play any slower, let's be honest. So I think Scotland could, if they get out in front, I think Scotland could actually cause a pretty big dent in Australia, and it could be 10 points.
I think the exciting thing is the possibility of cats at rave, John. We talked about this before we came on air. That
that's all we care about.
That's all we want out the game is Horne at 9, Hastings at 10, Russell at 12. That's all we want.
All we need.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt fairly confident, and then I watched Squidge's video looking at how Australia have gone 5 in a row, and then I felt less confident watching kind of the way Australia had gone. Because I think the last Australia game I watched was the All Blacks game at the was it in Perth where they played on the Aussie rules. Global pitch. Yeah. And I was thinking, I'm happy for I'm happy the way things are going for the autumn. And then I watched Squidge's video of what's happened since then, because I had an awful lot of chance to watch Australia. And I kind of feel it's a shame that Australia aren't able to bring the full strength side up, because I would have rather have seen us. I kind of feel that that's always going to be an asterisk against this Australia team that comes up, and that feels. I would much rather that Scotland were testing themselves against full, test squads at full strength. So that's the. I think I can see Scotland by 10, but I think I would much rather that you had Karevi and you had Cooper and you had all these players available to you, because that would have been a hell of a test. Not that I don't think we'll have a good one, or that Australia are more than capable of. These young guys seem hungry and the culture's there. Then they're more than capable of giving us a shock, because we're more than capable of shooting ourselves in the foot.
Oh yes, we are world beaters at that.
I think one of the things that will be a big factor is just how good these French-based players are. Because I think we've seen with our team, we're in pretty desperate need of a bit of more experience at hooker and lock. And so if Tolu Larter's in the form he was for the 2019 World Cup, then that's great. He's an instant starter, then he'll probably do all right. If Skelton and Arnold are as good as everyone's saying they're playing in France and they can replicate that at test level, that's great. But for me, and my question for you guys, I guess, is our fullback stock's just completely shot. We have not developed enough fullbacks. And so obviously they've tried to jettison Curtly Beale in there. Does it really matter who we pick at fullback? Are you guys feeling pretty confident your aerial game's just going to be quite dominant against us?
Yeah, because I think Doohan came on leaps and bounds for particularly Scotland and with the Lions. I think what Doohan has shown, and we've had a lot of debate about kind of, Scottish and how we use residency, but I mean, effectively, Scotland developed Duhan into the player that he is. When he came over, he was, he had the muscle, but he didn't have all the technical ability. But you look at him under the high ball for the Lions, he was really strong. I think the difficulty was that there was, we talked about it during the Lions series, there were guys getting in the way, and the execution wasn't there. But his ability under high ball's fine. Hogg's ability, they don't tend to drop Darcy Graham back. It tends to be Russell that's back in the backfield, and Matt Ferguson. Darcy tends to kind of come up into the line a bit more in defence, because even though he's 5 foot nothing, he can absolutely smash it at a ruck.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you feel, John, but I mean the high ball's not particularly concerned for me for Scotland anymore. It was maybe 2 years ago, but
yeah, I mean, I think defensively, so the high ball is always a concern for Scotland defensively, but I think if Scotland can just get parity on that, like not make too many mistakes, not drop too many balls. Thinking about the way Rennie set his Glasgow teams up as well, the kicking game was different. There wasn't as many kicks to compete. It was more kicks for space, so that would play into Scotland's hands as well. Obviously, just kind of removing the lottery that is the high ball sometimes. But yeah, I think offensively, I think Scotland would be confident, no matter who you put at fullback, and especially if you put Beale at fullback.
Yeah, because that's one of the big things. Your kicking game's gone leaps and bounds. I'm glad that you mentioned it before, John, because I know when Nick White first came back, I think he just saw Conor Murray do a few boxes. He's like, I guess I better do that. But there was no rhyme or reason. It was just, all right, well, let's just chuck it up there and see how it goes.
Conor Murray.
Yeah.
And we look at you look at what Ali Price is absolutely lethal at box kicks.
Yeah.
He can drop them on a penny and make them into really contestable. And I think we'll see that. We didn't see a lot against Tonga because I don't think we needed to. But I think the part of that was keeping the powder dry for the Australia games. We wouldn't give too much away. So I think we'll see a lot of box kicking from Ali Price for Duhan to kind of run onto and chase.
Yeah, certainly if there's nothing on, that'll be the go-to, though. Price will put the ball in the air and watch Duhan or someone else. Jamie Ritchie's obviously good at the chase as well, so get Big Ritchie under it. And if you can't get it back, smash the boy in front of you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's that. We'll leave it there for this preview. Mitch, thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers,
so late and staying up late. Let you get to bed
No.
now.
Look, thanks very much for having me. And sorry that the Wallabies team wasn't out to talk about, but the Scottish team's so exciting. I can't wait for this match.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely superb. John, thanks again.
You're welcome,
see
Cam.
you Wednesday. We'll
Probably.
be back Wednesday back Wednesday with a normal full podcast, and then we'll have a South Africa preview later in the week. For the moment, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from John and Mitch.
Cheers, folks.